Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Happily Ever After Hours podcast. My name is Colton Simmons, and I am your host. Today, I have with me Kenna Schott of Kenna Schott Photography. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. So in today's episode, we kind of wanted to go over the ups and downs of what it's like to be a wedding professional, whether you're a wedding planner, a wedding photographer, videographer, anyone in the wedding industry. The goal is to kind of share our stories, share some of the ups and downs that we faced in the industry and in our time growing our business, to kind of give you an insight of, what it is that we've gone through. So if you feel like you're alone in a situation where you're like, I can't believe this happened in my business, like everything's over, or you're riding on the highest high of, the achievements you've made, we have kind of something for everyone here. So before we do get into that topic, I would kind of hand it over to Kenna and have her, take the chance to share her story of how she started her business and how she got into the wedding photography world. So handing it over to you, Kenna.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Well, there's been a lot of highs and lows, definitely. I started in photography. Kind of that story of being a kid, and picking up my dad's camera. I come from a few generations of photographers, so lots of film photos of my family back in the day, which is really cool to have. And then when I got to college, that's when things really got serious for me. So as a kid, just dabbling, and then making it to college, my best friend was a wedding photographer, and I just saw how cool it was. She had so many cool stories. I really only saw the highs, but she made it look so good that I was so excited about it, and she noticed that I had an eye for it and started just inviting me along to her weddings. And before I knew it, I was doing senior photos for friends. I remember when someone paid me $25 to do photos, and I was so excited. I felt like I had finally made it. And I just remember being stoked that I could do something that I loved and make money for it. Fortunately, I make more than $25 for a shoot now. But I remember just being so stoked at that humble beginning. And from there, I really just did it as a side hustle. Never expected to go full time. When I graduated, I went and worked at Trader Joe's for 9 months as I was trying to figure out my life path. And I found myself turning down shoots because I was having to work shifts at Trader Joe's. And I remember my mom being like, what are you doing? Why are you, turning down your dreams so that you can have this job at Trader Joe's? And I eventually took her advice. I walked in, put in my 2 weeks, and May 2019 was my first year going full-time, and I haven't looked back. It's been a great journey.
Oh, wow. So you've only really been doing this full-time for the last 4 years? My math serves me correctly?
Yep, 4 years full-time, and I did it about 3 years before that, just as, side hustle.
Awesome. How many weddings were you doing as like a side hustle a year?
I think in 2019, that was when I really started doing a good amount of weddings. I want to say I probably did like 10 or 15 that year. Before that, it had just kind of been here and there for friends, a lot of like courthouse elopements and second shooting. Yeah. Nice.
So, were there any significant challenges or setbacks like in the early days of your career, and how did you overcome any of those setbacks and challenges?
Oh yeah, definitely. One that sticks out in my mind was 2020. It was obviously a rough year for us all with COVID and everything. And I remember just being in a really low spot. It was, my first full year full time. And I had gone to a wedding, and I picked up my bag, and 2 of my favorite lenses fell out and shattered on the floor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was really depressing. I had spent a lot of time and money investing in those, spent a lot of time saving money to invest in them, and they fell out and shattered. So I remember I actually was looking back before this. I have a selfie of myself sobbing in the car on my way home from the wedding, because I remember just feeling like it was over. I didn't know how I was going to be able to afford to replace them, and I didn't even know if I wanted to. I was so embarrassed. People had seen it happen. And yeah, so I ended up, fortunately, my insurance actually helped me cover some expenses. I didn't realize that at the time that my insurance covered it. And I just had to pick myself up off the floor and be like, you know what? This is probably the first setback of many. And I'm glad I pushed through, because things have gotten better since then. And I haven't broken any more lenses.
Definitely. So everyone who just heard that, take that as a very cautionary tale to make sure you have insurance for your business, no matter how
Yes.
much it costs a month. I can't tell you how many photographers I talk to and they're like, oh, should I get insurance? I just, I'm doing this wedding and the venue asked for insurance. And I'm like, man, you got to have insurance. You never know if it's going to be a light stand that falls on somebody or your own equipment that breaks. You want to make sure that your butt is covered. And if we're going to be going out there and making, even if it's only, you're starting out and you're only making $1,400, $1,500 a wedding, that's still more than like some people make in a whole week. So make sure you're doing the right things to dot your I's and cross your T's. That way, you can have your precious lens protected. So
Yeah.
when that happened to you, was that like at the beginning of the wedding? Was that midway through? Did you have backups for your lenses?
Yeah, fortunately I did. It was during family photos, which was even worse because everyone was
man.
standing around watching me. And so I did fortunately have backups. So I was able to, still shoot the wedding okay. Even in the early days of my career, that was something I was really afraid of, which I guess has turned out to be a good thing because I had, multiple bodies, multiple lenses from the start. But it was definitely, I think it damaged my pride more than anything.
Yeah, I think of like the early days of my business, and when I think of like things that really like mess me up at first, was the very first wedding that I shot on my own, that I wasn't second shooting for someone. I go to the wedding, I shoot the wedding, and I get home and I upload the photos, and I probably had altogether from like an 8-hour day, like 800 photos that I took. And I delivered the gallery and I thought it was absolutely normal. It gave them like 300 photos, and the couple was like, this is all we're getting for our wedding photos. And I had just never like cross-checked with photographers I had second shot for and been like, hey, like what should I aim for? What should I, do to make sure that I'm giving the couple like an adequate amount of photos? And they were like, oh, like when I finally did go back, I was like, hey, like I have this couple upset, and they're like, you should at least try to be giving like 100 photos per hour. So something like that happened early on kind of turned me into an overshooter. So now like I leave a wedding that I shot by myself for 8 hours and I've got like 4,000, 5,000 photos on my SD card. So that definitely is how like I've overcome that, which, maybe I should pull it back a little bit and not be shooting so much because, as you know, storage gets expensive. But, that's like, one of the worst things that's happened to you in your career, would you say? Or anything else that might have happened early on that like helped you be better as you moved on through your journey?
Yeah, that was probably the most outwardly embarrassing thing that happened. I had a situation with it was one of the first few weddings I shot, a client who I thought I did a great job. I gave them the photos. I was very proud of them. I remember sending them to a bunch of photographers and everyone was like, this looks great. And she responded, and not only was she disappointed, but she was mean. And to be honest, she was kind of bullying me. Yeah, I remember her making comments about all I wanted was one good photo for my wedding and you couldn't even do that. And imagine this is, the third or fourth wedding you've shot. That was another moment where I was like, I think I should just see myself out. Like, I'm good.
Well, I'm glad you didn't, because your work is absolutely amazing.
Thank
But
you.
that would also go to say that as artists in this field, and I was just speaking to one of my mentoring students who was dealing with an issue with a couple that she did an engagement session for. They were supposed to have her shoot her wedding, and then they like ghosted her, unfollowed her on all social media, like never reached out to her about her wedding. And she was just like, had them reach out recently and say something along the lines of like, oh, like we loved those photos and we want to print them. And when you look at that whole situation, she herself was like so down on herself. She was like I felt like a failure. I felt like they never, how do I say this? They never like validated me as an artist. And the one thing that I found being in this business is like, we are like artists, but then right in front of being artists, we have like our Target logo on us. Like people see us as a business, so
Yeah.
they don't think of the emotions that us artists have. So in those situations where somebody's talking badly about your work, I could imagine like, yeah, I would have wanted to, pack up shop and just go back to working at Trader Joe's. But you transformed that and you allowed that to like build tough skin, because I know that the time that I've spent in the industry, you kind of have to have tough skin, and it's like there's a part of you that hurts, but at the end of the day, it's like, all right, I'm just going to do what I can to fix the situation and make the customer happy, because at the end of the day, like, we want to make sure that our clients are satisfied to the best of our ability, but also, not let ourselves be walked on. So how did you change the way you communicate with clients moving forward from that, like with the negative interaction you had with that couple?
Yeah, well, I definitely, in the moment, I wanted to respond and, just kind of tell her how it is and tell her how just rude she was being. I tried to stay really level-headed through it. I took my time to respond. And in that situation, she actually ended up texting me a few months later and apologizing and saying that she actually just felt really insecure about herself and that it wasn't the photos. And she actually asked me for an album. So I was a little upset about that, but I feel like it definitely taught me, the importance of when you receive something like that from a client to see it from perhaps their perspective. It might not actually have to do with you. It might have to do with their perception of themselves. She was a bit of an older bride, and I think that she had really only seen photos of young brides, and it just was shocking for her to see herself not be a 20-year-old bride. And it also just taught me the importance of taking time to respond. Don't respond when you're in the moment. I think that goes for a lot of things in life, whether that's relationships, like just take a step back, take a breather, and, say a prayer and then just pick yourself up and respond. So that was a very, very valuable lesson for me early on in my career.
I agree 100%. So I know that like the challenges build us and grow us in this industry. What would you say was one of the most like touching things that like made you realize like this, like one, I can't believe I get to do this for a living, and two, like I want to do this like for the rest of my life? Like, was there a moment at a wedding, or was there a moment that you saw like throughout the day at a wedding that like was like touching, and the fact that you got to capture it, or something along those lines?
Yeah, something that actually just happened about 2 years ago was really a solidifying moment for me. I had captured a wedding. The bride was really close with her grandmother. They got ready at her grandmother's house, and grandma was just a really central part of the day. And after I sent the gallery, I didn't hear back from the bride. And I was a little surprised because she had been very communicative with me. And I found out that her grandma had passed away just a few days after the wedding, very unexpectedly. And that was just, it even makes me emotional thinking about it now, because it was just such a crazy reminder of how fragile life is, and that we have such an opportunity as photographers to capture that. And she was saying, it was hard for her to even look through the photos in that moment because it was just so much joy around her grandma. But she was like, I know that these photos are going to be everything to us. We got to get ready in her house. They were about to sell the house because she had died. So they had those moments of, getting ready in grandma's bedroom. And it really just changed the way I shoot weddings too. I feel like I focus a lot more on parents and grandparents now. I try to get those pictures of them. I try to get a specific couple's picture of them, because you just never know. And the day is about them too. As much as it's about the couple, it's about, the shoulders they stand on of the past generations. And that was something that really just touched me and showed me the importance of my job, and also kind of reframed the way I capture weddings.
Definitely. I can agree and like really resonate with that. I would say myself that becoming a parent has changed the way I view weddings, because I shot weddings for 5 years before I became a dad. And not to say that I like went through the motions on wedding days, but becoming a dad, holding my daughter for the first time, seeing her take her first steps, and seeing these like little accomplishments. There are times like during wedding days, like this last Saturday, the bride's dad was given this heartfelt speech about his little girl getting married and how he's so proud of her, and he starts crying, and I'm over there with my camera in front of my face and not like holding it out using my mirrorless like screen, because I'm hiding the fact that I'm over there crying. And I feel like I resonate so much more with like understanding like the milestones. And I even on wedding days now, I'll go to parents and I'll say, if I meet mom and dad for the first time, I'll shake dad's hand, give mom a hug, and I just look at them like directly in the eye, like being super intentional, and say like, congratulations, like this day is as much about you as it is for your daughter or your son, because
Hmm.
like this is that like that next milestone. This is that first walk amplified. This is that graduation from high school amplified. Like your child that you've invested so much time and effort has found someone that's gonna essentially take them from your care and care for them in your place. So it's,
Yeah.
I see weddings in such a different light now. So I remember the first wedding that I got to do after, like one of the first weddings I got to do after my daughter was born, because of COVID, like things shifted up here, was for a daughter who rushed to plan her wedding because her dad has ALS and it started to progress, and they wanted to capture everything like while he was still having full function of his body and all of those things. And I'll never forget the photo that I got of the two of them during the getting ready portion. It's like dad sitting on the couch and she's like sitting on his lap like his little girl with her arms wrapped around his neck, and they just had this moment. And I know, looking back at that photo is going to mean so much to her for the rest of her life, because in that moment she got to be like the little girl in her daddy's arms again, while I'm trying not to right now. I got a show to run here, and I don't want anyone on YouTube or Spotify seeing me cry here. So it's those things that really like I capture these moments, and I get to look back and say like, this is really like what I get to do for a living. Like by capturing these precious moments for other people's families, I'm able to provide for my family. And it's just like this strange thing that I remember when I was miserable shooting my product photography full-time job and wishing to take this full-time, that like this was the goal path, and to be here every day is just, it's mind-blowing to me. So I know we just got into like some emotional things here. So let's change the atmosphere here a little bit. So, we've gone over like some difficulties. We've gone over the things that really like pulled our hearts into this industry. Now, what are some of the most memorable highs that you've come across in your career? And when I say that, I mean, we got to this point, but now like there's these like lofty goals we have. Like I want to shoot this wedding here at this venue, or, I want to be able to travel and shoot a wedding in Italy. Like, what has been the most memorable high of your career?
Yeah. I feel like my high in general has been just gaining the respect of other photographers. I think for so long, I just kind of felt like another photographer in a sea of a million photographers. I think every, artist has probably felt that way at some point. And getting to this point now where I'm coaching other photographers and having people come to me and ask me questions and, look to me specifically to second shoot for them, it's very humbling. It's, something that I always hoped to become, and to actually see it happening now just feels like a culmination of all the time and energy I've put into it, and all the time and energy I put into my own education and learning. So yeah, as simple as it sounds, I think just being respected in the photography space and, knowing that other people look to me when they have questions has been definitely a high for me.
Yeah, that is a great way to look at it. A lot of times, like, I mentioned before I even asked you the question, like shooting a wedding here, but like just getting the respect of other photographers is huge, because, the human side of us always is like seeking validation. And, you can probably understand this. Like there was so long you were working in a market, and then you become like the big fish in that market. And it's like, now you're like talking to photographers across the country, and like sometimes you're like feeling like DMing them like, oh man, I must be annoying them. But then when you see how they respond and how they talk about you to other people, like I've talked to Austin about you, I've talked to Mason about you, and they've all had great things to say. And those are two of some of my favorite photographers that I draw a lot of inspiration from. So to see like how you're respected amongst like a group of what I consider at least like elite wedding photographers in this country goes to show that you're not just saying that, like it's the truth. So, hats off to you, and keep doing
Thank you.
what you're doing, because, at least, even like the family session that you captured for us, like it's some of our favorite photos that we've ever had taken of us, and we're coming on 10 years married in a few weeks here. So it's your work's appreciated. You're a great photographer, and I just wanted to take the chance live for however many people listen to this to hear that. So
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think for myself, the biggest high that I found in my career was to finally have something that could stand on its own. Just a little of my background for those who don't know me. I grew up in a single parent home with a mom who was on disability. So we grew up I grew up in a kind of rough situation. And growing up, I always knew that like I wanted to do something better. I was always the kid that like, you know, even being in the worst situation, had the good grades in school and was able to rise above it. And I felt like I was always getting to a place where I got to like a pinnacle and I hit a roadblock. And I graduated high school, got a degree to a great school. And then I went to that school and it just wasn't for me. And I felt like a failure because I dropped out and it wasn't what I was passionate for. And then I tried this music career when I was in my early 20s, and that didn't work out, and I felt like a failure. And it wasn't until photography that I found something that I knew that this could be the thing, that it felt different from everything else, that could really give me that drive to build something that was my own and something I could feel proud of and something I could show my future children one day. Like, this is something that like Dad, with the grace of God, like was able to build and provide for our family. So when I was able to leave my full-time job, like that was like the biggest like win I think I've ever felt in my entire life. And it doesn't have to do, like I said, like you said, it didn't have to do with shooting the most amazing weddings in the world. It's just knowing that I have something self-sustainable that I put blood, sweat, and tears into, and I get to wake up every day and do what I love, like to have the time in the middle of Tuesday afternoon to film a podcast because I'm not stuck in a cubicle. Like, all of those things mean so much to me. And I think that is like one of the most memorable highs, was leaving my job and knowing that my boss was offering me a raise that would never be comparable to what I'm making now. So that's huge for me. So, you know, for you, as your business grew, you know, you started shooting weddings, you left Trader Joe's. Where were you working at the time? Were you in the Sarasota area? Were you in a different area of Florida? Where were you at the time?
Yeah, I was actually over in West Palm Beach, which is where I went to college, and I started my business over there. And I had no idea I would be moving back to Sarasota, where I'm at now, which for those who aren't familiar with Florida, it's just the other coast of Florida. So I was born and raised in Sarasota, and yeah, sorry, I totally
No,
lost my
no
train of
worries.
thought.
So you started in West Palm when you
Yes.
graduated college because you stayed out there. Now you're in Sarasota, but that was a shift you
Yes.
didn't see happening.
Yes.
What would you say, how would you say success impacted you as you grew your business and you started to, you know, your clientele started to not say increase, but like you started booking higher end weddings and you started to get into the more luxury market? Would you say that there was a shift in your business, or did you just try to keep things the same way that you had kept them the whole time?
Yeah, there was definitely a huge shift. I remember it was shortly after I met my husband, which was right before COVID hit. I just was feeling really stuck with where I was. I knew that I, you know, wanted to shoot better work. I wanted to just be a better photographer in general, not even just about, you know, having higher end clients book me, but I just wanted to be the best I could be. And he really pushed me. The biggest thing I think was updating my website. I think so many photographers fall into this trap of we have all this new beautiful work and we don't update our websites. So I've always had a habit ever since then of every single year I completely redo my website, which people think is crazy, but that's been a huge thing to be able to, you know, show my new work, to be able to show how my experience is changing. Because in those first 5, maybe even 10 years of your business, things are changing so much year to year. You know, we can't expect something like a website, as dynamic as it should be, to serve us through all of that. So definitely updating that a lot. I think that taking on less work was another big shift. You know, a lot of us, we want to make more money, so we think the answer is to work more. And for me, I found that, you know, the year of COVID, I shot 40 weddings And that was on top of the stress of everything else happening in the world during that time, which was a lot. And I just felt like I was so overworked. I was running around like crazy. I wasn't able to give my clients my best. I wasn't able to shoot my best work. So, really scaling back actually and only shooting 10 to 15 weddings a year has been a big switch for me. A lot of my weddings now are multiple days too, so that helps a lot. I don't double book weekends. I won't shoot 2 weddings on the same weekend. And yeah, so scaling back, ironically, has been a great part of, shooting these different kinds of weddings that I've been shooting now.
Definitely. When you say scaling back, are you doing that intentionally just have more time to focus on like life and like the back end of business in doing things like having time to update your website? Or is it strictly just for like a self-care focus, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a few things. One is definitely, wanting to have my life back and be able to actually enjoy life outside of work. But also just when it comes to work, I feel like as a creative person, I kind of have a creative capacity and I really can only pour out so much before, I walk into a wedding and I'm just like, time to shoot a wedding. And my motto has always kind of been the day that I walk into a wedding and, treat it like any other wedding, that's the day I'm going to see myself out of the industry. Because the whole reason I went into this was to be able to do something meaningful. And I never want it to feel like it's just another day. Before every wedding, I always just try to take a moment. I say a prayer over myself, over my, mental being and my physical body. And then also just towards being able to respect the fact that this is their only wedding day. I think so often in the wedding industry, we fall into this thing of, oh, it's another wedding. I shot one yesterday or I shot 3 this week. And I just never wanted to feel that way. I wanted to respect the fact that this is their only wedding day, that this means so much to them and their family. And I wanted to capture it in a way that honors them and their families. So yeah, a bit of both.
Awesome. And that kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to talk about was maintaining balance between your professional life and your personal life, especially during the wedding season. What do you do, although you are shooting less weddings throughout the year, that could still, you're doing multiple day events, you still have the editing, you still have the correspondence, especially in the middle of wedding season. If you're only doing those 10 or 15, I can imagine there's some months where it's like every weekend is full. What do you do and what do you implement to have a balance so that you're not hitting lows in terms of just like mentally? Because we could talk about highs and lows of like bad things that happen during the weddings, but lows could also be, like you said, being in that mental place where you're like, I have no energy to do anything else when I'm not at weddings because I'm just so empty because you're just pouring and pouring and pouring and your cup, runs dry.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Even with shooting only 10 to 15 weddings, there are still months, specifically here in Florida, around the holidays, which is already a crazy time. So it's really important for me and my husband that no matter how crazy things are, we always try to take some time in the evening together, whether that's running to the grocery store together or going on a little kayak trip. Just trying to take that time to be together is the most important thing for us. Remembering that it's just a season is a big thing. So there are times, where the truth is things are crazy and maybe you will miss an evening getting to hang out with your spouse. But I think just having that, reminder that it's just a season and being communicative and the people in your life that it is a season and that you won't always be, missing out on weekends and things like that definitely helps. I think having my husband in the business too helps with the balance. He can see when I'm getting overworked and he will be like, you need to take a step back.
So that's a great way to keep yourself balanced. Like the thing that we try to do is we try to have one day where there's no work done, obviously when I say no work, I mean like no editing, no hours down like at the computer, and it's just like family day. And that's usually like Wednesday, Monday and Tuesday I try to keep as like an office day. Thursday is like a flex day because we have swim lessons in the morning with the kids, but it's always making sure like there's that intentional time. Like even if on a work day, like I'm working from like 9 to 4 in the office, like at 4 o'clock before dinner. If it's nice weather, like during the summer now, like we'll take the kids out on a bike ride and go to the bike path down the road from us and just spend an hour as a family doing something active outside, or going for a ride, going out to maybe eat at a local creamery or something like that, to make sure that like we're remembering like why we're working so hard to grow this business the way that we are, because we're doing it for our family. And I don't want my
Yeah.
kids to grow old and be like, man, dad, all you ever did was work,
Right.
because that would kill me, because I want to be as active and involved in their lives as possible. So definitely finding that balance and being present in as much as you can, and being intentional about your days and how we structure things, because as a small business owner, there's often blurred lines between work and
Yeah.
play. So that is super important. So when it gets busy in the middle of the wedding season, you're going through those dips of the highs and the lows. What is it that you do to keep yourself creative? Because you said in the past, like, you can't pour out of an empty cup. So what do you do to keep your cup full creatively?
Yeah, I think that shooting film has been a big thing for me with the creative side of things. Just having to take the time to really slow down. I think so often on a wedding day, we get so into this just like go, 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 because that's kind of how you have to be. But I also try to remember that at the end of the day, you really don't need thousands of great photos. You need a handful that are really, really awesome. And I think that film can really bring that. It makes you slow down, it makes the client slow down, and it makes me think differently. And it also makes me think that things need to be, exactly how I want them to be composition wise. The bride's hair needs to be perfect because I'm not going to waste a shot on film. So definitely shooting film has helped with my creative flow. I think that I'm inspired a lot just by the beauty of Florida. A lot of my work has a lot of palm trees and sunsets and
Yes.
beaches. So spending, not to brag, Colton, sorry, I know you love Florida.
I mean, I'll be there soon enough. I just booked my first wedding there, so
So exciting.
might as well call me a neighbor before you know it.
But yeah, so spending time in nature really recharges me. We do a lot of kayaking in the evenings and just watching the sunsets, as cheesy as that sounds, but I'm always looking at light and how light's hitting things, and always just imagining, if I had my camera right now, how would I capture this? So yeah, just always having that mindset of, that.
Definitely. No, that
Maybe mark that one too.
no, that was great. That was great. We're going to keep that one in there. So you mentioned that you coach and you mentor photographers. Have you yourself in your journey implored a mentor or someone above you to coach you through certain things and to keep you inspired and to like maybe pull you out of a rut that your business was in?
Yeah, definitely. I had a coach, it was about 3 years ago now, and she's not technically still coaching me, but still a good friend of mine, and I go to her for questions and advice. And that was just a big point in my business where things really changed. She just gave me the truth I needed to hear. I remember her looking at my work and saying, Kenna, your work looks like every other photographer in South Florida. How can you make it different? And I was like, I don't know how. And she was like, exactly, you need to figure that out. And I feel like that set me on this journey of just trying to figure out how I could, make my work look different. What was it that I, could offer? I think that sometimes we're afraid to show our unique perspectives because it's different. We kind of like look to Instagram or we look to other photographers for what's already been done. And that really set me on this journey of actually, I want to look different. I want people to see my work and know it's mine. So that was huge just with the whole mindset of it. I feel like a lot of our work was just surrounding mindset and, feeling worthy enough and feeling good enough to shoot these weddings I wanted to shoot and work with the couples I wanted to work with. So I really can't recommend coaching and mentorship enough for someone starting out or even if they've already been in their business for many years.
Yeah, I think having a mentor is super important and super necessary to get you to where you need to be, because so oftentimes we try to just figure things out on our own, and it sounds like you went on this like self-discovery tour of who you were. And I think that's so important for photographers because, like you said, we get so caught up on what is the best in the industry doing, who is like the best and how can I emulate their style, rather than trying to like look within and say, these things that I always hold myself back from doing on wedding days, maybe I should lean into that and create my own pathway. And when I first started, my wedding photographer at the time, my wife and I got married, and my wedding photographer kind of like took me under her wing, so to say. It wasn't like a actual mentorship, but any questions that I had, she was always open to answer them. She had me second shoot with her a lot, and I feel like I got to shoot at a higher caliber of weddings from a very early stage, and that was a very valuable insight on like what could become of my business and what was available. Because had I second shot like these random like weddings, like the weddings that I shot with her, one of the weddings I second shot, like a president's son was at. So I was like at these very like high scale weddings, and it was able to allow me to set the bar. So when I started working on my business, I started like knowing like there is a possibility of this out there. It isn't just some like dream that I'm going to have to, you know, get to a place where I can pull back and not shoot as much because I'm making more per wedding shooting these higher end weddings. So she helped me a lot in terms of, you know, finding my style, like just directing me with how to like act and be on a wedding day. Sometimes it's not just about the shooting. It's about how to be professional, how to carry yourself, how to handle communicating with families, communicating with clients. And a lot of those things I learned from her really shaped who I became as a photographer. So I fully agree and tell everyone, not just because I have a mentorship or Ken has a mentorship like coaching program, that you should definitely seek someone, because it'll allow you to circumvent years of spinning tires in the mud or making the mistakes that we made along our journey. So if you do need a mentor, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to Kenna or myself. So
yeah, I totally agree with you. I think too, though, that that's something I tell people when they reach out for coaching is like I chat with them and see if we're a good fit, because it's like you were saying, this was someone who was where you wanted to be. And I think that's so important to choose a coach who's where you want to be. And I think even proximity in some ways is important, because like you were saying, she was able to bring you along. I do the same thing with my coaching students, and my coach did that with me as well. And being able to have that in-person opportunity is so incredibly important. And even just when it comes to making connections, you know, in your region, with when you have that relationship with a photographer who's however many steps ahead of you, it's so valuable. So yeah, super important to find someone who's where you want to be, that you can look up to and aspire to be like.
Definitely. It's funny because I have a coaching student who is flying out in September. He lives in Texas, and he's like, I just want to fly out and just shadow you for 2 weddings.
That's awesome.
Because obviously he's in Texas. So we're doing our best to get him second shooting for some photographers out there. But it's awesome to be able to have someone who's like, you know, I see the importance of needing to be there on a wedding day and understand how you handle clients and all those things, because I can only learn so much through Zoom calls or courses. So yeah, it's definitely, proximity definitely helps. So we've talked about the things that have gotten you to where you are right now in your businesses, the highs and lows. What would you say some of your future goals are for Kenna Schott Photography?
Yeah, I feel like they're always changing, if I'm being honest. But I think a big goal right now is we really want to have a studio, ideally on our property, separate from our home, but just have a studio to photograph families in, and for bridal sessions. I can definitely see, you know, our work heading that way with just something different. And I think that's exciting for me and for my husband as well, is just having the opportunity to do something a little different that we don't see being offered in this area. So that's a little bit further out. I think that in the near future, my goals are really just to keep, you know, honoring that 10 to 15 weddings. I think I have this tendency to want to push that, but I know the importance of sticking within that. So, staying local, honestly, we really like shooting local, especially, you know, as we talk about growing a family. I'm sure you understand having kids as well. So I don't know if I have these, you know, crazy goals of going to Italy and shooting this or doing that, but really just staying local and serving couples well here and doing it at a capacity that I feel like I can manage business-wise and home-wise, is really my goal. It's simple, I think.
No, that's a great way of looking at it. You know, you don't have to be the traveling destination photographer to be successful. Being successful is a measure that you set, and sometimes we lose sight of that and we allow success to be how other people measure us. But at the end of the day, like, they're not going to be the ones that are going to, you know, be raising your kids, they're not going to be the ones that are going to be left with the responsibility of, what do I do with my kids when I have to travel and I'm gone? And for me, like, I travel with my kids for all of my destination weddings, but that adds a whole nother level of complexity, because you haven't yet, but traveling with two toddlers for multiple hours on flights, like, we only do direct flights now. There's no connecting flights. And even then, like, when we tried to, when we left Florida in April, our flight got delayed for 7 hours. So we were in the airport with kids that didn't want a nap, because they're in public and there's so much like stimulus going on that they were like, it gets tough. So to have that goal to just stay local and serve where you're at, like, that's amazing. There's, if anybody ever told you like you're limiting yourself, they just don't understand the goals that you and Ryan have for your family. So it's super respectable. And I can eventually see myself, when we start adding more and more children on, that's going to be the goal. Once we get to Florida though, then we'll stay there.
You'll never want to leave anyway, so.
I didn't want to leave when I was already there. So for those that are entering the wedding industry, what tips can you give to them to be able to handle the pressures and the responsibilities that come with capturing someone's special day?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for learning as you go, but I also think that there's some things that photographers should really have down before they shoot their first wedding. I see way too many photographers not dual recording, not using both their card slots, or not properly backing up their photos, not keeping their SD cards until they deliver their weddings. And I just always say it's not a matter of, if, but when you're going to have an issue with your technical side of things. So cover your bases there. A lot can be learned while you're doing it, but you can't retake wedding photos. You can't. You can redo a bridal session, but you can't capture those moments again. So I think that my biggest advice is always just cover your bases when it comes to not losing photos. And then on the more creative side of it, don't be afraid to lean into what it is that you do uniquely. I think that what makes a photographer stand out is their perspective, and every person has a unique perspective. I think that some people just tend to, give in to what everyone else is doing. And I would just really encourage anyone who's entering the wedding photography industry, especially, things can start to look a lot the same, and don't be afraid to do things differently, to stand out and to just have your own voice.
Definitely. Voice is a huge thing. And it's too often that I see photographers, just like we were talking about earlier, just like coalescing, and like everyone's photos looks the same. And, I know from personal experience that once I started changing what I did and wasn't afraid to be different from the rest, that was when I started to see the most success, and I was happiest the most, because I didn't feel like I was trying to fit in. I was just being myself.
Yeah, likewise.
Awesome. So before we wrap up here, are there any words of encouragement that you would give other photographers as well to help them stay inspired on their journey?
Yeah, I would just say don't give up. Things are going to get hard. And I think what makes the biggest difference is just not giving up, keeping pushing through. I read a statistic earlier that was saying that only 15% of photographers make it to their third year. And I think that it makes sense why, because there's a lot of challenges in those first few years. And people always ask me, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to compete with these photographers who have been doing it forever. And the only way to do that is to just stick with it and do it for a long time and, get yourself to that point. So when things get hard, stick through it. It'll get better. Don't be afraid to, have your voice, and just be yourself, and your clients will love you and appreciate you for that.
Yeah, that is super something that resonates with me so much. I'd never seen that statistic before, but you said 15% of photographers who start actually make it past their third year. And when I look back and like think of all the photographers that I started shooting with, I'm probably like one of 15 of us that's still shooting and
same.
doing it with passion, which is sad because I remember how passionate everyone was. And if you don't continue in something that's going to feed that passion, you put it to the side and it becomes an afterthought. So
right. Yep.
Thankful that we're part of that 15%, right?
Yeah, me too.
Man, this was really good. I hope that, you listeners were able to get something of value out of this. I know that I did, and I know that I hope that Kenna did as well. But
I did
before,
as well.
but before we go, Kenna, where can listeners connect with you and find you, like on social media or your website?
Yeah, my Instagram is just my name, Kenna Schott, and my website is also just Kenna Schott. So easy to find me.
Yes,
There's not
definitely.
many of us out there.
Yeah, I mean, before we even got on this call, I mispronounced your name, so I'm glad that I was corrected before I made that blunder
I'm used to it. It's okay.
in front of everyone here. So awesome. I appreciate everyone for listening in for this week's episode. And as I do in every week's episode, little shameless plug for my course, Pathway to Full-Time Photography. If you're looking for help in growing your business and getting your wedding photography to a place where you can leave your full-time job and chase this dream that we all do, definitely don't hesitate to DM me or visit me on my website at coltonsimmons.com. So Kenna, thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to chat with you again soon.
Thanks, Colton. It was great.
No problem. Take it easy.
Bye.